I've got the front all put together, fully assembled, all the joinery cut, rails and stiles, and even the panel. During that process of working on the front, now that I can take my final measurements off of this front that's assembled, during that time I actually had to do a little sidetracking and create the panels. I had laid out all the walnut for the frame parts, but of course needed to do the panels out of cherry. So went to my lumber rack and grabbed cherry. About anywhere between 8 to 10 inches wide, and pretty long boards, and needed quite a few of them. These, I've got 4 panels, 2 sides, back and front, and the top, so 5 total. What I ended up doing, these were a little bit cupped, so instead of just jointing them and then ripping them, I actually could rip each one in half. I have 4/4 stock, and my panels are about 3/8, so I did book matching or slip matching depending on what looked the best. But I actually ended up cutting them down the middle first, then jointing them, then ripping them this way, so this one board will become 4, cut there, and then both of those halves cut here and here, and then glue the whole thing back together. That way I would save more of the stock because there's a lot of cup this way. If I just jointed a wider board like this, I might not have enough material left over. So, and I'm not too worried about the panel, that saw kerf, and cleaning it up and putting it back together. Of course, it doesn't exactly line up, but the front has the K, the sides are broken up with some extra rails, so I'm really not too concerned about losing that little bit of material. So I went through and created all those panels. Here's a side panel, all glued up. Oversized. Here's the back panel. It was looking really great, and even ended up drum sanding them so they're ready for some random orbit sanding and some hand sanding. This case, of course, is frame and panel, and there's a number of ways to go ahead and join those corners, join the frames up, and even put in the panel. What I've decided to do is actually use a domino. So here's a Festool Domino, and a huge shout out to my buddy Diami for lending me his domino. So this is his. I haven't had a chance to buy my own. I tried to do it quickly because I need it for this project. Long story, but huge shout out to Diami for lending me his domino. So I worked on, first time I'd use this, so I did some practice cuts, and essentially it makes a loose tenon, that fits into the frame part. So you make mortise in both frame parts, and then fit in a loose tenon, and that's how everything slips together. So you cut your rails and stiles exactly to length, make the mortises with the domino, and then the loose tenons come with this that exactly match the mortises. So that's what I've done for the front, and I will do that for the rest of the case. There's probably, 30 mortise and tenons to create for this whole case. Now the reason I'm using the domino instead of maybe a traditional mortise and tenon or traditional loose tenon or some other joinery method is mostly for speed, and also that the construction will be very solid. So I have huge faith in this construction method. The mortises are a really good size. The loose tenon is a nice chunk of solid wood that goes into there, and so there won't be any problem over the years of this case. The loose tenon is a very traditional joint. This is now just a much faster way of making that traditional joint. And it's definitely a joint also that you don't see. It's not like pocket screws or something like that where you're covering it back up. It's all integral, it's all hidden, and it's using solid wood construction. As I was working on the front, I also wanted to come up with the details that are going to be part of this case. I've got my overall design, but I wanted to start thinking about those little details that are going to be part of the case as you get in closer and see some of them. So here I've mocked up a little corner. Here's the domino and the loose tenon here. So I mocked up this corner with here's the frame, kind of the front, and then here's the top, and then a little panel piece. And one of the details I was working out is this this little element right here. So I actually created this on the table saw. Basically just tipped the blade a little bit and then ran it from the end, so you can see It's a little bit angled right there. So, and then ran it through and stopped it, and so this is exactly you know, my table saw blade diameter there, a little radius curve, and then just smoothed it out with some sandpaper. So this bottom part's flat, top is flat, and you end up with this little curve. And so I kind of like that detail. So that's something that's going to be across. This will be, of course, all the way across the top and then curve back down on the other side. And both rails I have, this top and bottom, a little bit different dimension. And so I like that, and that'll be one of the details that I add to this piece. Here is the front panel with the K. You can see it's all just laid out, just dry assembled, so I can take my final measurements of the height and width. And it's not fully done because this K, the curve here up at the top and bottom, has to be let into the rails. So it's still proud of the rails, and what I need to do is sketch exactly where that overlays and take away some of the rail material, and then that's going to sit flush. The K, the curve K, sits flush to the panel, right on top of the panel, and so I need to cut away a little of the rail and the style material where they intersect. And once I do that, then pre-finish the panel with, I think we're going to use oil and shellac, and then go ahead and do final assembly, and then finish the piece. So now that the front is fully dry assembled, I can take those final measurements for the front, create the back to the exact same measurements, create both my sides, and start working on the lid as well. So I've got the walnut ready to go, more parts to cut out. Here's a chunk with some parts labeled. So next steps, cut out all the walnut parts at this point, cut them to final size. I'll start doing the domino joinery on those parts, and then I will cut up the panels to match the openings and fit them into the groove, and then we'll be getting on to pre-finishing. I'm going to pre-finish the panels once they're all cut to the exact size. I've now got all 4 legs cut to side and the side rails and back rails all cut to size, length, width, and height. And now I've got it here, you can see, just dry assembled, so I can measure for the top. There's 2 side pieces here on the top that I still need to cut to length. And then I can measure the inside, right inside here, to get the width of the lid, and front to back to get the depth of the lid. I've cut all the domino joints in the legs. There's about 5 per leg, so about 20 joints. There are 3 side rails, 2 back rails, 2 front rails. I just have the top rails fitted here for the dry assembly to measure for the lid. I actually, for the dominoes, they fit pretty tightly, so I sanded some down so that I can assemble and disassemble the joints more easily and not sort of enlarge those mortises. So I didn't want to, you know, mess up too many dominoes or sand too many, so I just did the top rails to take the measurements for the lid. So I'll get the measurements for the lid and go ahead and cut all those pieces to final dimensions, and then I'm going to start grooving out the rails to fit the panels, and then I'll go ahead and measure for the panel dimensions, cut the panels to size, rabbet those edges of the panels to fit into the grooves, and then I should be ready to start pre-finishing those panels.